Hello, welcome to our panelists and our moderator. We are now going to have a very exciting panel. Future is Female. It's a panel discussion on various pathways women are taking to actively create women-led, labor-centered, community-centered, socially conscious business cultures. We will have Rozie DeLoach as the moderator, and she is joined by Daisy Tempest and Elizabeth Fanta-Vierschak. So please, I will hand over to you so you can do some quick introductions.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you, Yasmin, for introducing us. And again, I'm Rozie DeLoach coming out of Dallas, Texas. I have got two wonderful guests. Joining me today, Daisy Tempest from Tempest Guitars out of London. Daisy is an excellent guitar maker. Daisy, you recently opened your own workshop to make heirloom quality guitars direct to clients one at a time. You are committed to using sustainable materials in your making, along with making a reforesting donation to with each guitar purchase. Welcome, Daisy.
Thank you so much.
You're
so
welcome.
happy to be here.
Good. I've also got Elizabeth, and I hope I'm saying it, Fanta-Vierschak. Is that right?
Shock.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, thank you also for joining us. Liz is coming out of Philadelphia. She is the owner of Mount Airy Violins, a bow maker, has been running Mount Airy for 18 years. And according to your website, if you were to summarize your mission statement in 3 words, it would be making music local. Welcome, Liz.
So glad to be here.
Good. So again, I'm Rozie DeLoach, and my shop, Caraway Strings. Caraway is my maiden name. And I also started this 18 years ago. I had a simple rental program that I ran out of my house. And over the years, that has expanded to a brick and mortar shop with a full luthier team where we do sales and restoration. So I'm also happy to join all of you out here in the Women in Lutherie Conference. So we are getting to the point of this entire weekend. The future is female when we're talking about women in Lutherie. I mean, not the entire point, but one of our center cores that we're driving toward. And what do we mean by that? There's no doubt that today we're in the middle of a big cultural shift. It is not a surprise to see women in positions of power. If we're looking educationally, 55% of people who are in higher education programs identify as female, which is going to lead to greater change in the future. But we still have work to do. We've got, for those of you who joined MJ Kwan's panel on luthier income, it was obvious to see there was inequity there. And most of us in this industry know a female who has been overlooked or taken advantage of or minimalized. So what are we going to do? So when we are talking about this phrase, the future is female, is it about focusing on female empowerment in this field? Is it a reassessment of the way we may have been programmed into thinking of leaders as having more traditionally masculine traits? Is it a reprogramming to recognize the contributions of women as they already are, not having to learn to present themselves in a more masculine way in order to still be viewed as a leader? Daisy and Liz, what's your take?
After you, Liz, you kick us
Okay.
off.
Sure. Well, I think we incorporate a more organic view and less, stratified. And, for hundreds of years, it's been whoever is the leader in the shop saying whatever goes, and everyone learns those values and takes them on and does the shop well. Now, I'm much more interested in finding out how to make the people who have been attracted to what makes our shop, what can make them shine, and making sure that identify their strengths, allow them to flourish. And by helping them get the training that they are looking for. And I also think one more thing about that is that maybe the feminine approach has to do with being willing to listen more and talk less. What do you think, Daisy?
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, really. So yeah, first of all, really interesting title of this particular kind of, what would you call it, panel. I love the way it's phrased. It's addressing a lot of really important issues, and in regard to what you're saying about what you said at the beginning, Rosie, about kind of, I've got the sheet here and I'm just trying to remember exactly what it was that you said. It was, do we think we may have been programmed into thinking leaders of having more masculine traits? Absolutely, I do. Like, I think that women have to work especially hard to be leaders and to be taken seriously. But the Lutherie industry is just completely, it seems to be sitting in a decade that has come and gone for a lot of other industries. And of course, you know, in all business practices and in all workplaces, there is still problems of inequality, but in Lutherie it's extraordinary. It's so much more, and so yeah, I think also that statistic just blew me away, that 55% of people identifying as women are now in higher education. That's fantastic. And but sad at the same time, because, you know, it's like, where are these women? Why are they not coming to us, you know? Because they're probably, you know, intimidated and don't think that they have the skills, because woodwork seems like a masculine environment. I certainly thought it was. But yeah, that's kind of my take on it, I guess, if that makes sense. I think there's a lot of work to be done, but I suppose that's what we're chatting about today.
Yeah, when I talk about a masculine approach versus a feminine approach, so I'm not trying to in that moment say all women in this camp and all men in this camp. I'm talking about a way of thinking. And when we talk about male leadership, there's a few different ways of thinking that have been given more weight in the past. Masculine approach is more often known as clear-cut strategy. Feminine approach is more often known as checking in with feelings and moods. Liz, you just spoke to that, and you said, listening more, checking in more.
Yes.
Now, one thing you also, excuse me, you said something about earlier. You said something a little bit about driving employees crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Because, maybe that's an approach people are not used to when you're willing to try new things. And top down.
The thing that we were talking about is when we pivot and make a change. And that's hard to do. You know, it's one thing that's interesting about this panel that I didn't realize until I'm sitting here looking at everyone, is that Daisy, I think you work by yourself, right? I used to for many, many years. And now I have 6 employees. And Rosie, you're in the middle of transitioning, or you have transitioned into working with many people. So some of what I think making, becoming a good leader involves can be true for if you're working on your own or if you're working with a group. And the main difference is the communication between the group and making that happen. It's a much slower process if you involve everybody in it rather than you sitting there making your own decisions. But it is so valuable. And I know we're going to talk about this later, but I'll allude to it now. Creating a mission statement, basically, because you can't be a good leader if you don't know where you're going. And you need to know where you're going and why you're going to be doing that. And so if you have people working with you, it means you have to have staff who care about those same things.
Yeah.
And you can't make them care about those same things. What you have to do is ask them what they care about.
Yes, 100%. And we do have a section set aside coming up that is about mission and ethos. So we're going to cover that really thoroughly. And what I do want to pull from each of you is some specific policies that you've put in place when pursuing your future with intention. Daisy, you have mentioned to me your desire to hire only women in the future. Do you want to share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so when I was entering the industry, there was no choice but to go and work with a man. That's because I didn't know about the one woman who I wish I'd written to, but I unfortunately wrote to men first, because I just wading through the amount of men who are guitar makers was a lot, it was a lot more accessible to find all of the men than it was to find Rozie, who I eventually found, because A, she's the most humble person ever, and she won't shout about how brilliant she is.
And I do want to clarify, we're talking about Rozie Hayden-Rich, who will be in the next panel, not myself.
Sure. Oh, lovely. Yeah, so Rozie Hayden-Rich, and she runs a company called Turnstone. But right back at the start of my journey, I don't know if we're mentioning male mentors here. I won't give him the grace of naming him, but I had a terrible experience with a male mentor. And had I known that there were women out there, I would have gone to them instead. Had I known how scary and unsafe I'd feel, I would have gone to a woman. And I regret not finding out about Rozie, but she wasn't actually in the place to take apprentices anyway when I was starting out. But I want to change that. I want to be the company where, if a young woman would like to come and learn Lutherie, she knows that she can come to a safe place. And I will be very, very stern about that. And I think, if she's competing with, 5 or 6 other guys, it's going to be intimidating for her. First of all, because, a lot of women don't have woodworking skills. And if they do, they're constantly battered down and told that they're not as good as men because they're not strong enough, or all of this stuff that you come across. So I just thought, by paying back some of the regression or some of the inequality that women have faced over the centuries in Lutherie, it's not strictly PC to only say I'm going to only take people identifying as women, but ultimately the industry is owed it at this point, because there's been so much backlog of women being oppressed in the industry that I think somebody needs to stand up and say, okay, I'm only going to take women to pay back that debt, as it were. And I've got a friend who approached Rozie. She knew about Rozie, and she's about 21 now, but at the time she was 19, and she ended up finding an apprenticeship, and it did work well, and that was good. But it was she doesn't feel like she can go to anyone else, because she heard about my experience and she feels unsafe. Okay. She doesn't feel safe because there's no option to go to a woman. There's me and Rozie in the UK, and I think that's it. So I figured there was somewhere that people need to be able to come.
Mm-hmm. I applaud you for doing that, and for not taking your experience and being insular with it, and deciding that you're going to pay it forward for the next generation. Thank you. Liz, you shared with me earlier about starting at a male-owned workshop, and I believe the phrase you used was, "I need a wife." Can you give me a little bit of context about that?
Well, this was during my training, and I trained in 3 different places in Europe for short stints. So it was mostly based there, because I really got to know people pretty well when you're traveling and either, seeing them every day that way. anyway, I did notice that all these people they would work until work ended, and they would go home and they would have a meal ready for them. Their girlfriends or wives would come in and clean the shop. They would do the books. And I was like, how the heck am I going to get all this done? And so I didn't have any bad experiences with the people who trained me, but it was just the way they were incredibly generous and kind. Mm-hmm. And I might have just been lucky, but this was true. It's like taking care of your life I don't know how you could possibly have a kid and do that at the same time. Mm-hmm. I really don't.
Yeah. So. And as you have moved forward into your own position of power, tell me about some of your specific policies that you've implemented that have made your culture different from what you grew up in.
Most of it is about openness. Mm-hmm. I do have my own ideas. When I start a project, I have my own ideas about it. Mm-hmm. I try to be open-minded about hearing what other people have to say about it. We have right now, we have a policy of raising hand voting. So that includes people who are reticent to talk. And you've probably heard of this, but you can vote on something 1 to 5, one being, or 5 being that you support it and you will work for it. 4 being you support it. 3, you could go either way. 2, you don't really support it. And 1 being is you're really against it and you will work against it. And so everyone has to take a stand, even if it's, I could go either way, but it's important to have everybody have a voice. Mm-hmm. And also creating a mission statement and reviewing a mission statement every year with everyone's voice adds new things and gets their voice heard. And the mission statement is our guide into what we are going to do as a business. So it's hugely important. The other thing we did is the way the shop is set up at the moment, which I'm a little sad about. Upstairs are 3 men who are working at benches, and downstairs are 2 women who are admin people. I sit in with some of the admin. My bench is also downstairs in the back room in the shed. And so there is an upstairs, downstairs mentality. There could be, and there really isn't. And I've seen this in other shops where there isn't communication with people who are mostly dealing with customers and mostly dealing with customers' instruments. And so we noticed that there was a communications issue. And so now we have scheduled people upstairs to work with 1, 2, or 3 customers a day. And when they're done working with the customer, they're prompted, or they know they should ask to the people in the room downstairs, hey, how are things going? Is there anything you need me to do? And just making that change has really, really, really helped. And, we try and reciprocate when we go upstairs too. So just taking a temperature of the room and seeing an open-ended question really, really helps.
Yeah. I have reflected on you sharing that about you getting your shop to communicate better. And in mine as well, I've got 1 admin, and then I've got a luthier team. And one of our recent practices was, first of all, doing a review for everybody, not the kind of review where I'm telling you what you did or didn't do right. Right. It was mostly asking questions. what is working, what is the customer experience like, what do you think could be improved on, what do you wish you knew more about. For my really young, I have two members that are in their 20s, and asking what do you think you should be better educated on and on the workbench. So one of my practices was having time where the administrator is sharing what she thinks the luthiers need to know more about her experience running the shop and how she does paperwork. And in exchange, the luthiers are sharing, this is what's on my workbench, and maybe you can talk about it in a future Instagram post. So, and that helps her, for customers that are walking in, know better how to diagnose an issue with an instrument. So definitely take a note from you, and would like to point out that that is one of my bullets: feminine approach, focus on presence and connection, and you're nailing it. So anything else you guys want to mention, Daisy or Liz, before I move to another question?
I'm not sure this fits here, but the other thing that we did is, as a conservative economic model, I use bonuses to reward people, but I don't do it in a normal way. So we look at the gross profit at the end of the month, and if we are over a certain amount that we've determined, everybody gets the same bonus per hour that they worked. And it's based on, and they'll get more if there's more gross profit. And so everybody roots for each other. Nobody has a particular sale that they're in control of. And but everybody works for that sale to happen in whatever way is important to them, whether it's getting the instrument adjusted a certain way or whether it's easing something over with a customer. So that works really well.
I love it. That gives me goosebumps. That's a great way to do it. Well, let's shift a little bit one more time and talk about advocating for our own future. Daisy, one way that you have discussed advocating for yourself involved stepping away from the workbench for 2 months to focus on marketing efforts. And where did you get the inspiration for this, the focus to do it, and how have you seen it benefit you?
Well, so when I stepped away from the bench for 2 months, I could have made it a lot less. I was moving into a new workshop at the time, so it was easy for me to take a break at that point. It was easy for me to take my time with moving into my new workshop. And I took that opportunity to give myself some time to do some marketing, as you said. And I think marketing is so important. Of course it is, but it's important to the point where I'd happily take a certain amount of weeks out of my year to just do that. Because what I've noticed from doing that is I've set up a lot of things such as press. I've been recording sessions with my instruments, that kind of thing. I've set up a lot of things which I now have been releasing, and it's like a trickle effect. So I've got a few articles coming out next month. One huge article in particular in the Financial Times. And I know that when that's out there, or rather, I know that at the beginning of November, which is tomorrow, I can just, well, I have been this week, but I could just crack on with Lutherie and not worry. I can be like, that's all done. And the article's coming out on the 13th of November, and that'll give me good marketing, and it's done. And I think there's something so valuable about that, because there's always the anxiety at the end of the day when you've been using your hands all day and time's gone like that. It's like, oh God, I haven't done anything for my brand. And it's like, oh, I should really go and do this. And for me anyway, I'm just like, I should do this. I should take a photo for my Instagram. But if that's already done and you have a backlog of images or you have a backlog of whatever, then it can do that. And I think that's been so valuable for my business. So yeah, I'd really and for my future, I think it's really important, because it does, takes the weight off you, so you can sit and not feel guilty about doing hand tool work all day or whatever, without like, oh, I need to do the business side of things today or whatever. because we don't have wives, do we? So I would love a wife as well. What a fantastic way of putting it. There's like, oh my God, I love that. So yeah, that's my stance on that.
Do you find that you have a hard time counting marketing and promotion time as work?
Yeah, so I love the business side of things. So I am doing it all the time. Like if I go out to the pub with my boyfriend or whatever, I'll always be on the lookout for marketing opportunities. Like I never rest, you know. So in that regard, no, it's never work, because I'm always thinking about it. And I think we're all like that when we have a business. We're always thinking about it. But yeah, I'll have a bit of irrational hours when I'm doing marketing, because an idea might come to me like, oh, I need to write to this publication or whatever, and I'll just do it like at 11 p.m. in the evening, whereas I haven't done any pitches that day or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So it's not very structured, but I just kind of get excited when I get excited. I have this creative flow that kind of is quite unpredictable, but I need to give myself the headspace out of the workshop to allow it to be its best potential. Some days I'm like crazy, like I do like 5 pitches in one day, and then the next day I might just do nothing, you know. But it's yeah, it's important, I think.
Wonderful. And further advocating for our own future, I'm very interested in talking to you about this, Elizabeth. You shared with me your intentions toward retiring from Mount Airy, and yes, I judge it to be a very feminine approach, not one that we typically hear of. And I'll expound on that a little bit. When I think about people selling their violin shop, there's a few outcomes that we're familiar with. There's a person who sells it, gets a lot of money, and goes and has an awesome time. Or there is the person who can't manage to sell it, and everything goes off to auction and you don't really have anything to fall on. So you're taking a different approach, and the term is a worker-owned business. So I'd love it if you could share with us about that.
It was the only approach that ever occurred to me. And I hope it's not strictly just, I mean, I don't mean to be contrary, but I hope this is ultimately not a feminist approach, that anyone would think that this is a good idea for their business. And it means involving people in the business from the beginning, as I said before, creating a mission statement, creating a strategic plan so that you know how to achieve your mission statement, and giving people access, open books access, so they can look and see exactly how financially the shop is running and who's getting paid what. And all that means that when you make a decision of like, you know, we're going to invest here, or we're going to invest in what marketing or whatever it is, everybody then can be kind of on the same page and understand, oh, that's why we need to do that, you know, because that's a hole we have and we need to fill it. And I have to say, a little bit by accident, this summer I purchased a house that was basically a shell for my daughter, and she purchased it. And that's the truth. She purchased it, but it needed a lot of work. I stepped away from the work from Mount Airy Violins around September 1st, which was the beginning of a rental season, which was crazy. And I would meet with people strategically, but I wouldn't really be there. And they got a fantastic stress test and did fantastically well. So it wasn't exactly planned, but it was possible to do, and I did it. And I see one of my staff people's on this list here, and I hope he agrees. But
so if I can clarify, you are training them to, at a future date, they are buying in as part owners.
yes.
They will be the people most involved in the success of that local community business because they work there.
Yes. And what our focus was from May on was becoming worker managed, so that people can make decisions basically on their own, checking in if they need to, but learning what they can make decisions about and what they can't make decisions and how to make them. And that to me came true, this fall. People were able to do that. And so that took a lot of prep and a lot of work.
Yeah.
And
but
there are organizations out there that can help you sort through the chaff and get to a place where you know what people need to know and what you need to know in order to be able to have a worker-owned business. And that can be a whole other hour conversation. But so it's a way of keeping something that is important to the community there and functioning into the future. So yeah, it was a no-brainer.
I'm not to the point where I'm thinking about how I would do retirement, but it's got my attention. It sounds, again, the more feminine approach of a community-minded way where it's not one pot of gold for one person. Everybody wins. And I admire you for steering toward that. We've got one more subject before we move into question and answer time. And it's one of my favorites. I want to talk to you guys about ethos and mission. Both of you steering towards your future have shared those words with me independently, bringing an ethos and a mission statement into your work. How important is it to incorporate this kind of thinking into your work, and how has it influenced your path?
Daisy, you go.
Okay. Women have influenced my work. I designed my only model around the female body. And as I've spoken about before, my mission is to get more women into my craft. So, considering there are 50-50% male and female guitar players, you'd be shocked as to how little women buy them. I don't know why that is, but I think it's stupid. And I designed a model that has a smaller neck carve and it's got a smaller body shape, and it's built for female anatomy, especially like when I sit on a guitar, it really hurts my boobs. So I was like, why is there no guitar really that kind of accommodates for that? So I've got a very tight waist on my instrument. And anyway, that I'd say that really impacted my work. Like my vision impacted my work in that regard. But also I, as you said at the beginning, I donate a certain amount per instrument to a reforestation movement project. And that's really important to me. And also that influences my work in that I use more sustainable materials. So I'll push clients to choose things that are more readily accessible and more responsible, such as ebony composite woods, or woods that I have clear evidence of where they came from. For example, my friend Josh out in Hawaii clears rainforest areas after big storms or whatever, where trees have fallen, and it helps the environment for him to clear the area once they're fallen, and he takes those trees away, cuts them up and takes them back to the UK, and I'm building a guitar made out of that at the moment. So stuff like that is really important to me, and I think it's a no-brainer to be prioritizing that, given everything going on in the world. So yeah, that's what I say, and it's very important, I think, to my mission that I do those things. So yeah, bring more women in and be good to the environment.
Yeah, wonderful. Liz, you talked a little bit more about having a community-minded mission statement.
Yes. So we do have that, and if anyone's interested, they can go to our website and look at the part that says why we do this, and it has all that there. And it has the 4 steps of the mission statement that we answered, which I think it doesn't matter if you are a group of people or one person. If you can answer these 4 questions about who you are, what do you do, who do you do it for, and why do you do it? If you can answer those 4 questions, you'll stay in business forever. If you don't try to answer those questions, you really don't have a plan.
Yeah.
So anyway, getting back to this, what I want to say, in the beginning, when I was working by myself, I basically was working by intuition. I spent money when I had money. I never spent money when I didn't have money. I intuited what was needed and supplied it. Now that we are a group of people, and we adopted a strategic plan, which is a plan full of different steps to help you achieve your mission. And I'd be happy to share those different steps with anyone who wants them. And once we have that, you can, well, I'm sorry, I'm a little lost for words, but that is something that you can share with your whole group. And they are the ones who helped create it and know how to basically run things based on that. And that has been invaluable to the running of the business. I don't think it would have worked without having those intentions and what we are trying to do. When difficult questions come up, they help us answer them.
Yeah. I know from personal experience, going from owning a shop where I'm reacting to steering the ship with intention has made all the difference. And made all there's still stresses, but going forward with, no, this is my purpose. This is what the shop does. This is what we are about. Really helps steer that ship forward in a way. And like you said, you'll never worry about going out of business if you're steering with intention, which I'm going to believe in. Yeah. I am not familiar with how we do the Q&A. Yasmin, is this something that you bring to us for people who have questions? Or do we have any final notes that any of you want to share?
Well, we do have 2 questions.
Yes.
Yes. So one was actually from earlier on in the discussion, and it's from Anna Hootemaker, and it says, Elizabeth said that you can't be a good leader if you don't know where you're going. How do you define where you're going? Growth, finances, what does that look like for you?
Yes. So it means knowing what you want to do in terms of financial growth. It means what you want to do in terms of work-life balance. And my mind just went blank on the third thing. Sorry. I can share that with Anna or anyone else who's interested in finding that. I'm really sorry about that. Wait, I know. It's the whys. You have your financial goals, you have your work-life balance, and why you want to wake up and do what you're doing. So that is what guides me.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. And we have one more question. It is not directed at either one panelist. It says, how do you organize your day? So possibly we can get an answer from both of you.
Okay, I'll start. I terribly, as I've alluded to earlier, I'll see what I'll make a vague plan. I'll obviously, get up 9 to 5 hours kind of thing, wake up early, and I'll do as much work as comes out of me that day. Sometimes I finish at 3 p.m, sometimes I finish at 10 p.m. I'm still relatively young in that I'm 26, and my friends want to do stuff in the evening, and I feel obliged to enjoy my 20s and have a good time. But I'm in a great position, as we all are, where I really love work. I really love my work. So sometimes if I have a mad one on a Saturday night or whatever, I'll give myself the Sunday and the Monday to, recover and do some admin, and then I'll work through the next weekend. You know what I mean? So I don't really have a structure is the answer, but that works for me, and I get a lot more work done as a result of doing that, as opposed to trying to force myself to do stuff when I'm not in the zone or whatever. Yeah, that's probably not very helpful. But yeah.
I have worked sometimes in a structured way, and I have worked in a non-structured way. At the moment, for this last 2 months, it's been very non-structured, and it's definitely more frustrating with the non-structured version of life. I feel like if I can keep with what I'm doing, it's like, oh, I'm going to be doing bow makings such and such hours a week, and then I'm going to be running the shop such and such hours a week. That's always an ideal. It's always extremely hard to reach that ideal.
Yeah. I could answer as well. I try to organize not so much my day, but my week. And I've also got a 7-year-old who I've got to get from school and has got to be a part of all of this. And early on in the week, I have a habit. It just happens. I wake up at 5 to 6 a.m. I'm just awake. I just open my eyes. And I, on Mondays, want to attack the week. I want to sit and make lists of what we need to accomplish that week, how I can keep my employees not only busy, but steer them toward new goals that we want to achieve. And then the shop actually doesn't open till about noon. And I'm not there a lot for the open hours because then it's, at that point, it's whatever the customer needs. And I want to be a part of that, but balancing that with steering the ship and facing things with intention it's not always compatible. So that's what I do with my week.
Interesting.
Yeah. Over the years, it's become more and more of a quiet place. And then when I'm interacting with employees, it's with a lot of intention towards what we need to accomplish and how we can communicate better as a team.
Great.
Well, thank you very much, all of you. We don't have any more questions in the Q&A, so if anybody else has any more questions, can you please type them in? And otherwise, you can have a discussion among yourself with other points that you might want to talk about, and I will give you an indication when there's 5 minutes left.
Okay. Yeah. One thing that I didn't get into, but did read a little bit about a feminine approach of leadership that employs vulnerability. We have a tendency to view that as not a leadership quality. However, for those of you who are familiar with Brené Brown, she wrote Dare to Lead. She brings this into leadership practices regularly. by saying, I'm really struggling with this. I don't know about this. Can we struggle in this together? For me, because I didn't go to a traditional making school, there's a lot of times when I'm going to workshops and I have to say, I'm sorry, I've missed 5 steps, and can you please back up and explain, because I'm a little bit lost. And then there are times when I find that other people were wanting that question to be presented. Do you guys have any thoughts on vulnerability in your workplace?
You go, Liz.
Do you mean being comfortable with not knowing something and saying something about it?
Yeah.
That is so much easier for me now than it was when I was in my 20s. That's what I can say about it. I'm really comfortable with knowing what I know and what I don't know. And I know where I'm strong, and so it makes it really easy for me to say, wait a second, what are you talking about? That just may be experience, decades of experience down the road, and lack of ego. It's like I don't care if I don't know about it, in a way. It's like, yes, I'm here to learn.
Any thoughts on that, Daisy?
Yeah, Liz, I'm where you were in your 20s. I find it really hard to, especially when I was in a mentor, my first mentor, I was too scared to ask him anything. But with Rozie, when I was with Rozie Haydenrich, she explained everything so well that I didn't have to. I mean, the vulnerability was almost, I think that's why it was so great working with the women. She knew that I wasn't going to know what was going on yet. It was that kind of assumption of vulnerability. And that was really valuable, because I never had to, I was never put in the position where I had to challenge that vulnerability, because it was just laid out. She was like, she was great. I'm really grateful I had that experience. She's on the next panel, right?
Yes. You'll
see what I mean if anyone, she's a very special woman. And the vulnerability thing I've got more comfortable from working with her with reaching out for help when I need it and saying I don't understand. But it didn't come from a place of ego before. It was just I was too afraid of the retribution to ask the question.
Oh, wow.
It's so important, and it made me a better craftswoman for asking the questions. Of course it did. I think it's really important.
We actually have a question now, and it is for you, Daisy. It says, you said before that you wanted to get more women into woodworking or lutherie. How do you want to go about that?
Oh, well, I don't know yet, but I do know that opportunities arise at the strangest of times. So, for example, I was in the airport yesterday coming back from Ibiza. I was playing a gig and I had my guitar with me. And this little girl walks up to me and she looks at the guitar so longingly. And she says, "Do you play guitar?" And I was like, yeah, I do. I also make guitars. And she was like, oh. And she was obviously a player, not a maker, but she wanted me to, the idea of me playing a guitar was still clearly quite foreign to her. I think she was a little bit confused. And I think it was because I was a woman, honestly. But I said to her, I was like, you should play guitar. And she was like, really? And I was like, oh no, that's so sad. But anyway, my point is just normalizing women in roles like these are probably the way to kind of get the younger generations in. And encouragement. People say to me a lot, I couldn't make a guitar, I don't know how you do it. And I'm like, are you kidding? I am so bad naturally with my hands. I had to really learn that. It's not something that I was born with. It took a lot of work. And they're like, oh, okay, really? I'm like, yeah, Like, whereas if I said that to a man, they'd be like, oh, I could probably do that, straight away. It's like a completely different attitude, I've noticed, but obviously not exclusively. But yeah, I think encouragement is at the root of all journeys into new realms, right? I don't know.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. This was the last question in our Q&A box, so please feel free to continue talking. We still have 3 minutes.
Okay. Let's see. I would like to say that in my research about all of this, about what does that mean? What does it mean the future is female? My personal hopes is that while we definitely want to advocate more towards women, and there is an imbalance and there is not representation, my hope is that long term, the future is more fluid, that it is not as gendered, that we are not having to we're not having to be as guarded in our singleness of identity, but this has to happen first. There has to be more representation first for women. But for me and what I want, and for my goals for my shop, is a less gendered shop in general. Any thoughts? It looks like there's one more question.
Yes, there is. So there is a question here. Should we show more confidence like men, or be more confident, proud of showing not knowing it all? This is a question from Philip Van Norel.
Well, for me, again, that goes into the traditional stereotypes of masculine versus feminine. Does a woman in charge have to take on masculine traits to be recognized as a person in power? I personally think no. I think over time, what needs to shift is our vision of what a person in power looks like. And so when I'm talking about vulnerability, different kinds of ways of leading that's more collaborative, that is recognizing that there's other ways to be in charge than one that looks masculine.
I totally agree. I think being comfortable with what you don't know is part of being a knowledgeable person. That may sound crazy, but if you think you know it all, your mind is closed to learning anything new about it. And if you think you know how to make a bow when you're 26 and you're going to make it that way the rest of your life, I just think that there's just no room for change or growth. And that's true about how you run your business or how you anything new. So right. You just have to come from a position of humbleness, I think, and be open. And who knows how that may affect what you do eventually, and how you learn.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, all three of you. We are now out of time. Rozie, would you like to say anything before I end the session? Would you like to say anything to the speakers or?
I'm just incredibly thankful that both of these women gave of their heart and their time and their effort. And I think that this is just the start of this conversation. And I'm looking forward to more. And I do want to thank the founders of Women in Lutherie, Jimin and Jennifer, for getting the ball rolling, for creating a safe space, and starting this community going.